So the mass killing in Sudan is continuing, with new reports suggesting that 60,000 people have been murdered by the rapid support forces in just the last few weeks. And satellite imagery that we're going to show in today's video appears to show the burning of bodies in large pits, likely the RSF trying to destroy evidence of this massacre. And unfortunately, the number killed is likely to go higher, as 150,000 residents of El Fasher still remain unaccounted for. Now, The Guardian published an article just yesterday saying that 6 weeks after the RSF seized the city of El Fasher, corpses have been gathered together in scores of piles to await burial in mass graves or cremated in huge pits. With the capital of North Darfur state still sealed off to outsiders, including UN war crimes investigators, satellite evidence has revealed a network of newly dug incineration and burial pits thought to be for the disposal of large numbers of bodies. They quote British politician Sarah Champion, who said that members received a private briefing on Sudan, at which one of the academics stated that their low estimate is 60,000 people have been killed there in the last few weeks. They added that as many as 150,000 residents of El Fasher remain unaccounted for, and they are not thought to have left the city. They add that no expert or agency has been able to explain the whereabouts of the tens of thousands of residents who have been missing since El Fasher fell to the rapid support forces after a brutal 500-day starvation siege on October 26th. Now, the RSF, as soon as this reporting started coming out, said that they would immediately allow in international agencies and aid organizations. That still does not appear to have taken place 6 weeks after the fact. The Guardian says RSF officials had pledged to allow the UN into El Fasher to deliver aid and investigate atrocities. But as of now, those organizations are still on the outskirts of the town, unable to move forward. A UN source said, quote, "There needs to be a security assessment before we can plan on sending assistance. Right now, there is no guarantee of safe passage or protection of civilians, aid workers, or humanitarian assets." In fact, Nathaniel Raymond, the director of the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab, as the killing continues, like there were reports last night of artillery shelling in some areas of El Fasher, said, quote, "It's beginning to look a lot like a slaughterhouse." Now, to give you an idea of the scope of the killing, we have some comments here from Raymond speaking just a few days ago about what his team at the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab has identified and tracked so far in El Fasher.
When it fell, we could see the street filled overnight with 1.3 meter to 2 meter objects. And they were in C shape, J shape, or L shape. That's because when you shoot someone and you look at them from space when they get shot, they'll fall in the fetal position or on their knees. And so we saw trucks with 50 cal machine guns, and we would see 0.5 meter red discoloration on the ground, and that was blood. And we think we got a call, this is where I'll end. We had a ground network. We think they're all dead now. Our ground guys call us on Monday after the fall, and in the morning they say 1,200 of our family members and friends are dead. By that evening, they say 10,000. By Tuesday, we never got them on the phone again.
Now, I think it's worth showing some of the work here done by the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab. I will link their full report in the description below, as well as their profile on X, where they continue to keep everyone updated on this developing situation. But this is some satellite imagery they shared in a recent report. We're going to run through a couple of these. The first, they show empty markets, the report is titled "Empty Markets, Ongoing Body Disposal in El Fasher." The first one here, my apologies for the pronunciation, Daraja Ola in El Fasher. They say analysis of satellite imagery collected between 9 and 13 November over the Daraja Ola neighborhood shows the new presence of an actively burning pile on 13 November that was not present in 12 November imagery. Newly present at this location are two ground disturbances and scarring, displaying signatures consistent with charred remains. It's pretty wild that here we are 6 weeks later still relying on satellite imagery. Thank God we have this degree of satellite imagery that's publicly available. But the reason we're having to rely on this, and Raymond talked about this in some other clips, is all of their sources on the ground have gone quiet. They're probably dead at this point. So they're not getting any first-person accounting. The RSF for the most part, has stopped publishing any videos of their atrocities that they were in the opening hours and days of this attack. So it's all based off of what we can see from above. They show another one here, Al Saudi Hospital in El Fasher. They say analysis of satellite imagery collected on 17 November shows the new presence of white objects in a hole dug on the western side of the Al Saudi Hospital. This hole has been previously observed with white objects placed in its center, subsequently lit on fire, and burned to ash multiple times throughout November 2025. The imagery below shows white objects' presence in the hole on 9 November, with charred ashen remains visible on 13 November. The imagery collected on 17 November shows more white objects placed in the hole. They look at Defso Market in El Fasher, where they say no current pattern of life observed compared to prior years and 2023 baseline. This one's creepy because we've got a couple here talking about pattern of life where you're just going to see there's nobody in the city. Now, they have a caveat saying it's entirely possible that all of this activity is happening in areas where the satellites can't detect, right? A little bit of overhead cover and you can't see the people, but it's a marked difference between these two. And, with the backdrop of bodies likely being burned and the first-person accounts from the opening days of so many people being killed, a likely takeaway here is that the people are not coming out or cannot come out, as so many have been killed, wounded, or driven away. Defso Market here, they say when comparing imagery from August to November 2025, the market appears to have increased vegetation overgrowth and lacks visible activity, including persons, vehicles, and carts near the market. Although market activity has decreased throughout the conflict, vegetation overgrowth visible in September to November 2025 imagery is abnormally high compared to prior years during the same period. And they also looked at the Mawashi market, a livestock market, where they say market activity in satellite imagery collected on 17 November, there is no current pattern of life visible at or near the livestock market compared to a 2023 baseline activity. Although it is possible the activity within the covered market occurs where satellites cannot detect, there are no visible patterns of life in open areas. Again, it's not crazy that the patterns of life in an area decrease over time, especially as the fighting is ongoing. But what you're going to see I would recommend downloading or going to the website to look at some of these images, there's nobody there. There's no cars, there's no carts, there's no animals, there's nothing. It is a ghost town. Now, while it's believed that most of the civilians were not able to evacuate El Fasher, we did have imagery and first-person accounts of people that did make their way out of the besieged town. Reuters talks about the experiences of some of those as they were shaken down and sometimes murdered if they couldn't pay a ransom. Reuters says Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces, which besieged the Darfur city of El Fasher before storming it in late October, are systematically detaining residents and demanding ransoms for their release and killing or beating those whose families cannot pay, witnesses, aid workers, and researchers said. 11 survivors said that some of those unable to pay were shot at close range or killed in groups, while others were severely beaten. A Reuters reporter saw survivors fleeing across the border into Chad with injuries that appeared to be from beatings and gunshots. We're not getting a lot of new reporting on what's happening in Sudan. A part of that, as mentioned previously, is there's no reporting on the ground. It doesn't exist anymore, especially in the besieged city or now fallen city of El Fasher. I would highly recommend, if you're interested in keeping up to date with what's happening here, this awful tragedy that's unfolding in real time, please consider following the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab. From everything that I've seen, they have really been leading the charge, kind of breaking stories and providing some of the most detailed analysis of what's actually playing out there day in and day out. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.